I watched black water pour through my living room ceiling onto my hand-scraped vintage oak floors, and I knew right then it was not an accident. Jessica stood at the top of the stairs screaming that the handle broke and the water just would not stop. But I felt a cold calm settle over me. Because I have smart home cameras in every single room, including the hallway outside the bathroom. And I have audio. You have to understand that this house was my life. My husband Mark and I spent 3 years eating ramen and working 7 days a week to buy this Victorian fixer-upper that everyone else said should be condemned. It had good bones, but bad everything else. We did 90% of the work ourselves. I learned how to wire electricity. I learned how to sand floors until my fingerprints were gone. I learned how to hang drywall and tape mud until my shoulders felt like they were on fire. Jessica, Mark's older sister, called it the money pit. She came over once when we were stripping the lead paint and told Mark he was wasting his potential and that we were living in squalor. She wrinkled her nose at the dust on my clothes and asked if I really planned to live like a laborer forever. Mark defended us. He always did. He told her we were building equity and a future. She laughed and said we were building a dumpster. Jessica has always been the golden child. She married a wealthy real estate developer named Greg and lives in a glass box on the north side of town where she hires people to change her light bulbs. She hates that Mark is happy with me. She hates that I do not care about her country club memberships or her designer handbags. She hates that I make things with my hands. When we finally finished the renovation, we decided to throw a massive housewarming party. It was going to be our victory lap. We invited 50 people. Friends, family, neighbors who had cheered us on. Even the grumpy guy from the hardware store who gave me discounts on lumber. The house was perfect. The original crown molding was restored. The floors gleamed like honey. The kitchen had these beautiful quartz countertops that I saved for 6 months to buy. The party was going great. People were gasping at the transformation. Mark was beaming, holding my hand, telling everyone how I designed the open concept layout. Jessica arrived late. She walked in wearing grand stilettos that clicked loudly on my wood floors. She did not bring a gift. She brought a bottle of wine that she opened immediately and didn't offer to share. She walked around the living room running her finger over surfaces looking for dust. She found none. She looked at the kitchen island and asked if it was faux marble. I told her it was real quartz. She smirked and said it looked nice for a budget renovation. I ignored her. I was not going to let her ruin my night. About an hour into the party, Jessica asked where the upstairs restroom was. I told her it was the second door on the left. The one we had just finished tiling with hand-painted Moroccan tiles that cost a fortune. She went upstairs. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I was busy talking to Mark's boss, so I didn't pay attention. Then I heard a sound that makes every homeowner's blood freeze. It was the sound of running water. Not just a faucet. A torrent. Then came the scream. Mark and I bolted for the stairs. But before we could even get up the first step, the ceiling above the main living area began to sag. It looked like a pregnant belly made of plaster. Then the seam split. It wasn't clean water. It was gray, soapy, high-pressure water mixed with insulation and drywall dust. It exploded downward right onto the vintage leather sofa we had just bought. It splashed across the oak floors. It sprayed onto the walls I had spent weeks painting. The crowd gasped and jumped back. The music stopped. The water kept coming. It was like a waterfall in my living room. Jessica appeared at the top of the banister looking down. She wasn't wet. She looked frantic, but her eyes were dry. She yelled that the handle just came off in her hand and the drain was clogged and she didn't know what happened. Mark ran up to shut off the main valve. I stood there watching my dream house dissolve. The water was soaking into the floorboards. I knew within seconds that the wood would warp. The drywall would mold. The electrical behind the wall was probably fried. 3 years of sweat equity destroyed in 3 minutes. Greg, her husband, ran up to her asking if she was okay. She clung to him, acting like a traumatized victim. She said the plumbing in this old shack was dangerous and she could have been scalded. She looked at me and said I should have hired professionals instead of playing contractor. The party ended. People left quietly, whispering apologies, stepping over puddles. The restoration guys arrived an hour later with industrial fans and dehumidifiers, but they shook their heads. They said the water damage was catastrophic because it came from the second floor. The ceiling had to come down. The floors had to be ripped up. I sat on the front porch shivering while the remediation team tore apart my living room. Jessica and Greg were still there. Jessica was in the kitchen drinking another glass of wine, telling Mark that this was a sign we should sell the lot and buy a condo. She said she was doing us a favor by revealing how shoddy the house was before we had kids. Mark looked defeated. He sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. I looked at Jessica. She was scrolling on her phone, looking bored. She didn't look sorry. She looked satisfied. That is when I remembered the system. We had installed a high-end smart home security system. We put sensors on the windows and cameras in the main areas, including the upstairs hallway which looks directly at the bathroom door. And because we had weird pressure issues during the renovation, Mark had installed a temporary flow sensor on the main pipe that tracks usage data to the second. I pulled out my phone. I opened the app. I sat there on the porch in the dark and I scrolled back to 8:15 p.m. The video shows Jessica walking up the stairs. She doesn't look desperate to use the bathroom. She stops at the top of the landing. She looks at the family photos we hung on the wall. She sneers. She takes a sip of her wine. Then she walks to the bathroom door. She opens it and goes inside. The camera in the hallway has a microphone. It is sensitive. You can hear the door latch click. For 2 minutes, silence. Then, the sound of the faucet turning on full blast. Then, I heard her voice. She wasn't talking to herself. She was on the phone. I turned the volume up to maximum. She said she was at the dump now. She said Mark was parading around like he built the Taj Mahal and it was pathetic. She laughed. Then she said something that made my stomach turn over. She said, "Don't worry, I will handle it. They won't be listing this place anytime soon. I am going to make sure they are too broke to bail out, Mom." I froze. Mom. Mark and Jessica's mother had been struggling financially, but Jessica always claimed she had no money to help because all her assets were tied up in Greg's investments. Mark and I had been planning to use the equity from the house appraisal to get a loan to help his mom with her medical bills. I kept listening. The water was running hard now. On the audio, I heard the distinct sound of a cabinet opening. Then the sound of tearing fabric. Then Jessica said oops loudly, but in a flat, sarcastic voice. She said the drain seems to be blocked. Oh, well. She stayed in that bathroom for 8 full minutes while the water ran. She didn't call for help. She didn't open the door. She stood there watching my house flood. I could hear her humming. Then, just before she opened the door to scream, she said into the phone that she had to go. The show was about to start. I walked back into the house. The fans were roaring. The smell of wet drywall was sickening. Jessica was standing by the fridge telling Greg that they should probably sue us for emotional distress because the event was so traumatic for her. Greg was nodding, writing down notes. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a punch. I walked over to the TV in the kitchen nook. It is a smart TV connected to my phone. I cast the footage to the screen. I said, "Jessica, you might want to see this." Mark looked up. Greg looked up. Jessica froze with her glass halfway to her mouth. The video started playing. The hallway angle was clear. We watched her go in. We heard the water start. Then her voice filled the kitchen. Everyone heard her call the house a dump. Everyone heard her mocking Mark. But when she mentioned handling it so we couldn't help Mom, Mark's face went white. He stood up slowly. Then came the sound of the tearing fabric. Mark looked at me. I whispered that I kept a stack of heavy-duty shop towels under the sink. She stuffed the drain. The humming. The 8 minutes of water running. The sarcastic oops. Greg was staring at the screen, his mouth open. Jessica turned pale. She started stuttering. She said that is out of context. She said I was recording her illegally. She said she was talking to her therapist. Then the final line played. The show is about to start. The video ended. The kitchen was silent except for the whir of the industrial fans drying out the carcass of my home. Mark walked over to his sister. I have never seen him look so scary. He is a gentleman. But his eyes were dead. He asked her who she was talking to. She said it was nobody. Greg asked her to show him her phone. She refused. She clutched it to her chest. Greg is a big guy, a no-nonsense businessman. He told her to unlock the phone or he was leaving without her. She unlocked it. He looked at the call log. His face turned red, then purple. He looked at Jessica with pure disgust. He said you were talking to Scott. Scott is Greg's brother. His estranged brother who hates the family. It turns out Jessica wasn't just jealous of us. She was borrowing money from Greg's hated brother to fund her gambling debts, and she didn't want Mark and me to have liquid assets because she wanted to guilt us into co-signing a loan for her under the guise of helping Mom, but divert the money to herself. If our house was ruined, we would be desperate, and she could manipulate the family finances. It was a complex, twisted web of financial abuse she had been planning for months. Greg put the phone down on the counter. He looked at Mark and apologized. He said he had no idea. He said he would pay for everything. Every penny of the damage. Jessica started screaming that he couldn't do that it was an accident, that the plumbing was faulty. Greg told her to shut up. He said he heard the audio. He heard her jamming the drain. He heard the malice. He told her to get out. She tried to grab his arm, but he shook her off. He said he was going home to pack her bags, and she could go stay with Scott since she loved talking to him so much. Jessica looked at Mark, pleading for him to help her. Mark looked at the ruined ceiling, the buckled floors, the water dripping into buckets. He told her to get off his property before he called the police and pressed charges for criminal mischief and vandalism. She ran out of the house sobbing, leaving her stilettos behind because she couldn't run in them. The aftermath was not quick, and it was not easy. You can't just fix a flooded house overnight. We had to move into a motel for 6 weeks. The insurance investigation was a nightmare, but the video footage saved us. The insurance company actually went after Jessica for fraud because she tried to file a claim against our homeowner's policy saying she was injured during the incident. When we sent them the tape, they dropped her claim and threatened legal action against her. Greg kept his word. He wrote a check for the full restoration, plus extra for the furniture and the pain and suffering. He filed for divorce 3 days after the party. It turned out Jessica had drained their joint savings accounts too. Mark didn't speak to his sister for a year. His mother tried to intervene. She cried and said family is family, and Jessica was just sick and needed help. Mark played her the audio of Jessica saying she wanted to make sure we couldn't help Mom. That silenced her. It broke her heart, but she stopped defending Jessica. We rebuilt. We put the floors back down, better this time. We repainted. We bought a new couch. But the innocence of the house was gone. Every time I hear a pipe rattle, I jump. Every time it rains hard, I check the ceilings. Jessica lost everything. Greg got the house and the cars in the divorce because of her infidelity and financial fraud. She moved into a small apartment on the bad side of town. She tried to become a victim on social media, posting vague statuses about betrayal and how toxic in-laws ruined her marriage. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I just posted a time-lapse video of our living room renovation part 2. The caption was simple, built to last no matter what storms try to break us. It went viral in our local community. Everyone knew what it meant. A few weeks ago, I was at the hardware store buying mulch. I turned the corner in the garden center and there was Jessica. She looked 10 years older. Her hair was frizzy, her clothes were wrinkled. She was buying a single potted plant. She saw me. She froze. I waited for the venom. I waited for her to scream or make a scene. Instead, she just looked at her feet. She mumbled hello. I looked at her and I realized I didn't hate her anymore. I just pitied her. She had a perfect life and she burned it to the ground because she couldn't stand seeing someone else build something of their own. I told her hello. I asked her how she was. She said she was managing. She asked about the house. I told her it was beautiful. I told her we finally installed the backsplash in the kitchen. She nodded. She looked like she wanted to cry. She said she missed the family. She said Scott turned out to be a user and dumped her when the money ran out. I didn't offer to help. I didn't invite her over. I learned the hard way that you cannot let termites live in your foundation just because you share a bloodline. I told her I hoped she found peace. I walked to the checkout counter and paid for my mulch. When I got home, Mark was on the front porch staining the railing. The sun was setting on our house. The house we saved twice. I sat down next to him and told him I saw Jessica. He stopped brushing. He looked at me and asked if I was okay. I said yes. I said she looked sad. He nodded. He dipped the brush back into the can. He said sad doesn't fix the ceiling. He is right. Sadness is not an apology. Regret is not a reparation. We have boundaries now. Jessica is allowed to come to family Christmas at his mom's house, but only for 2 hours, and we do not leave her alone in any room. We do not discuss finances. We do not discuss her divorce. We are polite. We pass the potatoes. But she will never hold a key to my house again. Sometimes I watch the video. Not the part where she destroys the house. I watch the part where Mark and I are standing in the wet ruins, holding on to each other, refusing to break. That is the real story. Not the water, but the wall that stood against it. There are people in your life who are like water damage. They seep in slowly, they look for the cracks. And if you let them, they will rot you from the inside out. You have to find them early. You have to dry them out. And sometimes you have to rip out the drywall and start over to make sure the mold doesn't spread. It took us a year to fully recover. But last weekend we hosted another party. A barbecue in the backyard. The sun was shining. The new deck held everyone's weight. The music was playing. I looked up at the bathroom window on the second floor. It was closed. It was safe. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't check the weather forecast. I just enjoyed the sun. Thank you for listening. Truly, if this story touched you or reminded you of your own battles, I'd love for you to like and subscribe for more stories about building a life that lasts.